how to start hybrid training. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Alyssa Olenick. I have a PhD in exercise physiology, and I've been hybriding since 2018, and I'm here today to tell you exactly how to get started hybrid training and your own fitness goals. When it comes to hybrid training, the thing to know at first is there's no true definition of hybrid training. All it means is that you're mixing together 2 or more modes of fitness in the same training program at the same time, with the goal of improving at all of those simultaneously or over time across a long period of time. The reality of it with hybrid training is that you're gonna have to start thinking of your goals in macro or longer scale progress than this individual weeks of training where you're executing both at the same time. Right now, in the sphere of hybrid training, it's really trendy to think of it as combining resistance training, so heavy weight training, bodybuilding, hypertrophy work, or any sort of strength work with running and or any other sort of cardiovascular style or endurance forms of training. I myself am a runner and coach runners and or cardio enthusiast, so that's where most of my expertise and knowledge and experience with hybrid training comes to. But yes, it can apply to anything that you're doing from cycling, swimming, triathlons, climbing, whatever it is, high rocks, CrossFit, all those things can kind of be dumped into the hybrid bucket as long as you're just combining 2 things at once in the same training program and trying to get better over time. If you're new to hybrid training, chances are you're either a true beginner with fitness and you're just trying to get into hybrid training and get started, but you have no idea how to start 2 different things at once at the same time. Or you have a long experience with resistance training, you're pretty strong, fit, muscular, and you're looking to actually add cardio into your program and recognizing it's not gonna kill your gains. Or you're historically a runner who's looking to add in strength training and get stronger. And I wanna let you know that hybrid is here for all of you. When I think of hybrid training, I think of it on a spectrum. All the pure lifters over here, the pure runners over here, and the pure hybrid people in the middle. The people on each ends of these only cares about being good at their one specific sport, but the people in the middle are trying to be good at both things at once or simultaneously. But it's okay if your version of hybrid deviates to the side in one way or another. Here in my program's the Lyss method, we call it hybrid on your terms because I believe in defining what hybrid means to you. So all my guidance here today is going to be for you to take and apply to whatever that looks like for you. Maybe you want to be a little bit more of a runner or a little bit more of a lifter, but you want to still do these things in your training program. And this is the advice that I would do if I was starting in your shoes. First, let's start with the true beginner. When it comes to hybrid training, a lot of people want to start just slapping everything on their training program at once. But for you, you have low capacity in both endurance and resistance training. And the number one thing that I would focus on if I were you at this period of time is just gaining the skill of fitness, gaining strength and muscle on the baseline of that, and just gaining some baseline cardiovascular training and or aerobic fitness. This will look like just simply getting into the gym 2 to 3 days a week and starting to do some formal resistance training, focusing on getting stronger and or gaining muscle, but mostly gaining the skill and improving at simply moving well and better in the gym. Strength is largely neuromuscular, which means that it's going to feel kind of wobbly and wonky at first. And so gaining that skill and then gaining that strength and muscle base on top of that will set you up for success to actually refine that and improve that over time. When it comes to building your baseline aerobic base or just general cardiovascular fitness, you don't need to jump into doing the highest, hardest bouts of training right off the bat. You just need to start getting cardio in. And most likely you're gonna start at the lower end of the intensity scale because it will be easy for you to start getting cardio in a way that isn't hyper fatiguing and taking away from the lifting itself that is going to be fatiguing as well. You want to look at probably doing 2, 3, or 4 days a week of cardiovascular activity at this point in time, maybe 20 to 30 minutes at a time. Mostly a good baseline of zone 2, maybe zone 3 moderate intensity work that's steady state. Just start accumulating fitness and volume there, and maybe mixing in some light intervals as you start to progress, but I wouldn't start with those at first. I would start with that lower to moderate intensity, steady state continuous activity to start gaining just some baseline aerobic fitness there while you're developing that strength in the gym. The reality is both of those will be fatiguing on you, and your overall bucket of fitness of what you can pull from, your baseline or your ceiling or floor of fitness, is a lot lower at this point in time. So you have a lot less fitness to give to both. So what this means is that might mean that you have to do less of both before you can do more of both and build that over time. So don't feel defeated if you can't do a ton of training sessions per week at the volume, the intensity, or as difficult as some of the people who I'm talking about that are further along the way. You will get there with time. So start with maybe 2 and 2 days per week and build yourself to 3 and 3 from there. I think the 3 and 3 split is the most Gen Pop friendly hybrid split out there, and I think it works really well for all people. But start with that and start start from there and start working on those things. Then as you start gaining fitness and making progress, you can start upping the volume or how much you're doing. So reps and sets in the gym, or time, minutes, or miles in your endurance training. And then your intensity. So then you're refining that. So you're lifting closer and heavier to that 1 rep max. You are doing higher hard intensity work. So HIIT sessions, sprint interval training sessions, speed work, quality sessions, all of those things, and really refining those characteristics over time. And then you can peak and refine that hybrid training, that perfect optimization of both, as everyone seems to be striving for at the top, but you have to start at the base in order to get there. Now, if you are someone with a large history of lifting or endurance training, but not the other, what happens is that base of what you have is only half of what you need. So you need to look at where your discrepancies are, or where you really lack and what you need to focus on. The easiest thing to do for this, for most of you, is what's the one thing in the gym that you hate doing and sucks the most? And that's probably the area that you need to improve in the most and should be spending some time focusing on. So for my strength athletes, listen, I am you. I drank the Kool-Aid, that cardio will kill my gains. I was the power lifter whose VO2 max tanked, could barely run 2 miles without having to stop and heavy breathe. Even as a growing up being an endurance athlete, was you at one point in time. And I'm here to tell you that you are going to have to put the strength and lifting ego to the side for a little bit to dedicate some time to actually developing aerobic fitness. And similar to the advice I gave to beginners when it comes to aerobic training, will apply to you. The biggest thing is that you need to pull back your lifting during this time. So take 100% of what you can give in any given week or session or day and pull that back to maybe 70 or 80% of what you're currently doing while you're adding in that cardio training. It will be fatiguing, it will be extra volume, it will be more on your plate to recover from, and your strength might feel like it's getting impacted for a little bit, or your gains are being impaired. Give it time for that adaptation to take place before you bail on that. And then once you adapt to that cardio that you're doing, you can either keep increasing that, and as you have more room for more training volume or capacity or fitness overall, or you can then bring your lifting back up to where it was before, become able to sustain both of those, and then increase the cardio again. The biggest thing when it comes to hybrid training is that it's always going to be almost this stepwise building of your fitness over time. You're going to be slowly and incrementally improving on both or one of those. And so your fitness floor raises with time. So right now you have a really strong base with your resistance training, but what you need to do is refine and build and focus on that aerobic training. So this might mean for a short period of time, maybe 3, 6, 9, 12 months, depending on how low your aerobic fitness is, you really spend time dedicated to focus on intentionally getting better in that cardiovascular training. So that might mean, I know a lot of people hate this advice, doing less days of lifting per week, especially if you're someone who's lifting 4, 5, 6 days per week, maybe pulling back to that 3 or 4 or maybe 5 range, depending on who you are and your overall goals and quality. Maybe moving from a bodybuilding split to more of a full body or push-pull or upper-lower split. I know that a lot of people cling to that, but I think that you can make a lot of progress by moving to more of those training splits, less days per week. It's keeping your sessions really high quality, and then making the space for both the time demands, the recovery demands, and or the fitness that you need to simply be spending the time working on that and gaining that in your aerobic fitness. So again, I would start, if you have a very, very low base of aerobic training fitness, start with maybe 20 to 30 minute sessions of low to moderate intensity steady state cardio to just start building up that fitness base. If you have a decent bit of training history, maybe you've done some CrossFit or some Metcons or some sort of cross training in the past or athletic history, you might be able to start adding in some more of that high intensity functional fitness Metcon type stuff and or high intensity interval training, sprint interval training type work a little bit sooner. But you want to think about also dedicating a large chunk of your time and volume each week to building that overall aerobic base of that low to moderate steady state intensity. A lot of people like to toss around that 80-20 rule. That's kind of dependent on who you are and how much you're doing overall, but think about doing most of your sessions in that moderate to easy range each week and having one quality session as you're building up that base. Then as you build up the volume of lifting and running that you can do simultaneously, you can start ramping up the intensity concurrently with that as you start to be able to handle more of both and raise that floor up. And then over time, you can just slowly titrate through improving strength seasons and or cardiovascular or endurance training seasons, or raising that floor up over time with that thing, so you can build up your pyramid of your base of a strong aerobic fitness base, a strong lifting skill and strength base, muscularity, your ability to do volume and intensity, refining those both at the same time and climbing up the pyramid to the peak of hybrid training. Last but not least, my endurance junkies, my runners, you guys are the opposite. You have an amazing endurance base. You can run, cycle, swim, do it all the cardio sessions all the time. But when it comes to the gym, you're fatigued, you're tired, you're sore, you can't keep up with it. So the same advice that I gave to my lifters there, we wanna do the opposite. You have this amazing aerobic base, but you may need to pull back on how much volume and cardiovascular training that you are actually doing in order to make space to do the strength training. My advice for most people in this bucket is to spend at least 1 solid year truly dedicated to gaining strength and or muscle or the skill in the gym, which means that you don't have to stop running or doing the endurance activities or cardio that you love, but you may need to pull it back or simply decrease the volume temporarily so you can make space for that strength training, both from a standpoint of weekly time that you have and or how long it takes to simply gain muscle and strength and adapt in the gym. You need to focus on the thing that is your weakness at this point in time. And the amazing thing about hybrid training is if you spend time building strength and or muscle, it's a lot easier to maintain that through future running or endurance training or high cardiovascular seasons in training. The reality is most people out here that we are idolizing for being amazing hybrid athletes started with these tremendous strength bases, and that's why they're muscular and or strong while still doing all these incredible endurance-based things. They have that already established, and it's a lot easier to maintain fitness than it is to gain again. I know for many endurance or cardio lovers, you worry about losing all your cardiovascular fitness, and I am encouraging you to not just cold turkey cut back all of your cardio volume, but again, pulling it back 20 or 30% like I recommended to the lifters as you start adding in that lifting training. And then as you start to adapt to your lifting training and you can start handling more of that and refining that with time, then you can bring back in that endurance training volume or shift towards a season specifically for training for a race or an event or ramping up cardio priorities because of certain goals that you are having. But again, you need to lay the foundation of both that strength base, both from a skill standpoint, overall strength capacity with your endurance and aerobic base. Refine from there. Again, you're probably already crushing it with the quality work, the high intensity work here, but in your strength, once you build a good baseline of fitness, a skill of strength and fitness and lifting, then from there, refining that by being able to lift heavier or more efficiently or doing higher quality or higher volume. Again, raising your floor of fitness and then being able to refine that at the top to optimize both of those at the same period of time. So for those of you who identify with those 3 categories, I want you to take note simply of where you need to get started. Again, for my runners, I would start with 2, maybe 3 days a week of lifting, maybe going up to 4. I think 3 days per week is truly, I have such a bias, it's such a sweet spot for doing this, and maybe pulling back your endurance training by a day or overall volume and intensity. Similar guidelines for my strength athletes, and then for my beginners, just simply doing less than you think until you can do more. For all of you, you can make progress simultaneously in both of these for a very long period of time before you're going to have to specialize in one or the other. So this is what I like to call strength and or endurance and or different seasons of training and cycling through different periods of time where you're focused on specific goals if needed. And then you go into seasons of refining or improving or regaining or adding more strength or simply trying to push both at the same time so they're concurrently increasing and improving at the same period of time. The reality is there's no one-size-fits-all version of hybrid training. It really depends on who you are, your fitness status, the time you can give each week, and your overall baseline of fitness. If you're looking for specific examples and more information, I do have an ebook called Hybrid that walks you through exactly what this looks like for you, the physiology behind this, and how to apply this to your week with over 60 examples of how to do so. But my best advice for all of you is focus on the long-term gains and or goals of hybrid training. Again, you're going to have to probably pull back somewhere in that space, and it's going to feel like the addition of the new thing that you're doing, whether that's cardio or strength training, is impacting the other thing. And that acute period of fatigue or lack of fitness is not a true physiological loss of strength or endurance. It's just interference of the fatigue on your system from the new thing that you're doing while doing hybrid training. But if you keep up with it and you keep doing it, your body will then adapt to that new thing that you're doing, and you'll be able to do more in both long-term. And that is the goal of hybrid fitness, not necessarily being perfect at each one at any given moment as you're gaining fitness, but improving on your weaknesses over time. So across time, across, months and years of training, you are improving and refining your fitness so it can all come together in a more holistic way. And last but not least, remember at the end of the day, it doesn't need to be that serious. Not all of us fall exactly in the middle of that spectrum where we're trying to optimize both and do, a sub 5-minute mile and a 600-pound deadlift or whatever that looks like to you. We're just regular people looking to train in a way that allows us to promote health and fitness and also be a little bit more variable and fun. Hybrid training is amazing because it allows you to have variety and you can kind of flex your fitness to your goals and your interest across time while still improving in strength, muscle gain, and cardiovascular fitness, all things that don't just improve our overall fitness status, but also our long-term health. So if you're looking to start hybrid training, go ahead and ask me one question below in the comments, and I will answer as many as I can to help you get started with your hybrid training. And if you're looking for a program that does exactly this for you, check us out in the Lyss method. I'll leave a link below. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys on the next video.